Hi everyone, we'll make a start then. This is the conservatory, so everyone's left the conservatory. My family are hiding away somewhere else. I've developed this symbol, the webinar symbol, to flash to them. Hopefully the dogs won't come on and interrupt, or that might be quite funny if they did. Okay, let's get rid of me from the screen and let's start. Welcome everyone. So we're going to look at 12 rocks in 12 weeks, basically. So hope everyone's okay. Obviously, it's been a really kind of upsetting time and lots of change. Who knew how much change we could cope with in such a short period of time? Hopefully you can see the presentation. There's not many videos. There's a couple I'd like to play. Hopefully the sound will work on those videos. But it's really about the 12 rocks of well-being, which if you haven't heard me talk about them before, I need to introduce myself, don't I? My name's Andrew, and I work in lots of different schools now, supporting parents, students, teachers with well-being, management of anxiety, responding to the brain really, and thinking about learning. So we're going to look at a rock a week, and this week we're going to focus on one of the most important rocks and one of people's favorite rocks, and actually a rock that lots of people struggle with as well. Myself included sometimes. So the Neuro Ninja program that we run is all about going from a brain slave, living in our brains, to becoming a Neuro Ninja, which means, sounds very agile and flexible, but I'm a nerd, so I'm not really like that. It's much more about being cognitively, emotionally agile and living in our brains in a different way, understanding how they work. And what we know from the neuroscience now is that the brain generates the mind. Just to introduce myself properly, that's me. Forget the list, just a nerd basically, passionate about the brain. It's an incredible, amazing organ, 86 billion neurons, 10,000 connections possible per neuron. So that's 1,000 trillion available connections, more powerful than a supercomputer. And we've all got one at the top of our necks. And even then, we sometimes feel rubbish some days and don't feel like we can accomplish very much. And that's the company we set up. So the neuroscience revolution is already changing lives, and I'm really passionate about well-being. In fact, it's the thing I bang on about the most, and the reason for it is actually it's fundamental to everything else. Well-being is fundamental to our relationships with other people, fundamental to our progress, fundamental to us struggling successfully, being determined, resilience, etc., etc. And once I kind of dived into the research, my feeling around it was, why had nobody told me this before? So I'm going to talk for about 20 minutes or so about the science of sleep and give a load of advice about how to get more sleep, and then I'll be around for sort of 15 minutes from about 5 to 4 to answer any questions. So the neuroscience revolution is already changing lives, and apologies you've seen this video before, but it's so inspiring. I just wanted to show it again to give you this sense of how things are going to be different post understanding the brain and how it generates ourselves.
With your stimulators off, I just want to mark what your tremor is like. Okay, you happy for that to go ahead?
Yeah.
Right then, with your right hand, if you possibly can, touch your nose, touch my finger. Okay, and the real test. Do you think you could pick that up for me? Right, okay. Should we switch it on? Okay.
Ah,
All right.
ah. That's it.
Does that feel better?
That feels good.
Should we try and do these assessments again? With this hand only, and with your right index finger, touch your nose, touch my finger.
Ah, that's weird.
Okay, you all right?
It's amazing.
Good. You all right? Yeah. Can you try picking that cup up for me with your right hand? Well done.
It's incredible. That is amazing. That is an amazing change. For him to even just drink is great.
That deserves a round of applause.
Such a moving video. I've seen that so many times and it still never ceases to move me. It's amazing. Basically that chap suffering from Parkinson's disease, the area of his brain that generates dopamine, which does a bunch of things in the brain, but in this particular instance is around smoothing movement, is no longer producing the right amount of dopamine. So what we've got deep in there is some sensors that generate a small amount of electric current, which enable his brain to generate enough dopamine to smooth movement. And we can immediately see the impact of that. So the neuroscience revolution is going to change all of our lives. And one of the biggest things it's going to do is change our conception of ourselves. So we get a really good handle on the kind of skill of well-being and the science of well-being. So my next question to all of us really is, how are we all? We will get through this together, but it is amazing how much we've already adapted. I'm sure, as all the different things were changing over the last fortnight and all the different bits of trauma from children having their GCSEs cancelled, A-levels, SATs, etc., all the different kind of issues and stresses. And there are obviously still things to kind of resolve, businesses, people worried about finances, etc. We will have felt all of these emotions and, people have rushed off to the supermarket to get loo rolls. In fact, there's a really interesting analysis of all the spending in March between 16th and 19th of March. It was like 2-3 times more busy than Christmas. Every family spent about £62 more a week. And really that's everyone's human brain responding to uncertainty and being plunged into anxiety. So we've all felt these experiences. And the focus today and every single week for the next 12 weeks is a different rock of well-being, understanding that really our brain builds our mind every single day. So when we wake up, the circuits start firing, connecting up and generating that experience of ourselves. So our brain generates ourself every single day, and the quality of the self we get to live inside is partly down to what we've done in the previous 24 hours. About half of how we feel is down to what we've done in the previous 24 hours, but we'll come back to that idea. The other thing that's really important to therefore link is that there is literally no distinction between mental and physical health. The brain generates the mind. If the brain's not in a good space, the mind's not in a good space. We now know, for example, that the area of the brain that registers physical pain also registers emotional pain. So if we're carrying any kind of emotional pain, the trauma and stress of what we've been going through recently, being rejected, any kind of failure, any sort of negative emotional experience that is lingering, that sits in that little yellow bit behind our prefrontal cortex, behind our forehead, and literally clogs up the smooth functioning of our brain. So there is literally no distinction between physical and mental health. And slowly but surely we'll begin to see that situation shift and change as mental health services get more funding and everyone realizes the brain generates the mind. Okay, so that means that we need to get really sophisticated about our mental health messages. And, while this is a lovely sentiment, the idea of being positive is very important, and I wouldn't want to belittle that. It's really important to be positive, but it is actually quite hard to be positive living in a human brain, which is wired by evolution to have a negativity bias. So our brain is like Velcro for bad news and like Teflon non-stick for good news. We're much more likely to remember bad experiences. In fact, they've measured it in the brain. Negative emotions create much stronger neuronal firing than positive emotions. That's deeply upsetting. Why is that? Because positive, happy cave people didn't live as long as nervous, cautious ones. If you were nervous and cautious, you were much more likely to spot predators. So your happy cavemen didn't get to pass on their happy genes to the next generation. So we're all evolved from nervous, cautious cave people. So we've got very loud, negative responses to the world, and they're important. We mustn't kind of cancel them out. We must accept them, notice them, and that is what we look at in 6 weeks' time when we look at Rock 6 emotions. But tonight we're looking at sleep. So all the way through these seminars, we're going to look at key ideas, and these are ideas from science. So they're facts that if we can apply them to our lived experience, will improve the quality of our daily lived experience. And hold on to this idea throughout these 12 weeks. The brain is a projector, the mind is the image that it projects. So the quality of our experience day to day is partly down to what we did in the last 24 hours. So how do we build the best version of ourselves every day? That's where the 12 rocks of well-being come in, and you don't have to wait 12 weeks to find those out. You can just follow us on Twitter and you'll see us posting about the 12 rocks most days, so you get the poster and can use that. So we need to treat our well-being and the well-being of those around us as a skill that we can develop. And what better time when we're locked down? I know we can't go out much, but we can go out at least once a day. And to build our well-being as a skill and build it in. And so when normal life returns, we've got that habit established. So 50% of how we feel every day is down to what we've done in the last 24 hours, because our brain is a physical organ. It's got chemistry and it's got electrical signals, and all of that stuff needs to get refreshed. Every time thoughts fire, they begin to fatigue the neurons, so the chemistry needs to be returned back to resting state. And we need to really look after ourselves. In fact, 2/3 of a 24-hour period should be what we call deliberate rest, which is those 12 rocks of well-being. We really need to make sure we fit those 12 in. And you look at the list and it's quite formidable, and you think there's literally no way I could fit all of those in a normal week. You absolutely can. You can stack several together, walk outside in nature, listening to music while walking with people in the same household in the current context because of social distancing, etc. But you can fit all of these in, and we're going to focus today on sleep. But just a word to say, if you don't feel great, look first at that list. If you feel a bit wonky, look first at that list, because that's what all our brains need. And every single one of those has got lots of papers backing up the impact they have on mood, the health of the brain, the flexibility of the brain, the thinking and feeling processes that are going on. Okay, so we need to treat well-being as a skill, and we're going to look at sleep. So in relation to sleep, we all need to get north of about 6 hours sleep a night, between 8 and 10 hours sleep a night we really need. If we just look at the impact of getting less than 6 hours sleep a night, it's 30% less memory the next day. We're more anxious the next day. We're more emotional the next day. We're more socially clumsy. We've got less immune cells, and that's if we just get less than 6 hours sleep. So during the course of sleep, memories are being reinforced, emotions and the emotional systems being regulated. But let's dive into those in a bit more detail. So we've got 600 million people worldwide suffering from depression and anxiety, and sleep is a huge issue for millions of us, actually. And we're going to look at issues around insomnia in a while. So if we think about our brain as a bit of highly sophisticated biological kit, we look after our phone, we make sure it's charged, we make sure it's got enough data. We need to look after our brain. And so let's just look at the impact that sleep has. It makes us live longer, enhances memory, makes us more creative, makes us look more attractive, keeps us slim, lowers our food cravings, protects us from a number of diseases, and leaves us more happy, less depressed, and less anxious. We won't do the quiz. I'll share all that stuff with you. We'll just skip the quiz. Okay, so let's look at the process of going to sleep and have a think about yourself in relation to whether or not you're a lark or an owl in terms of your chronotype. All of us have got a chronotype, which is basically preset by our genes as to the time when we will fall asleep in the evening. Some of us fall asleep early, we're larks and we wake up early. Some of us fall asleep late, we're owls and we wake up late. And then about 1/3 of us are halfway between those two extremes. And we're all different. We've all got a different sleep stride when we naturally fall asleep, and learning what our sleep stride is crucial to getting enough sleep. So that sleep stride is caused by two processes. One's melatonin release, a hormone produced across the brain that sends us to sleep, linked to daylight and the circadian rhythm. We're all ever so slightly jet lagged this week because we've lost an hour as the clocks rolled forward. But obviously the brain will reset itself slowly but surely with the daylight each morning. And it's really important to understand for teenagers that sleep onset is a little bit later as they get older. So younger children falling asleep naturally, maybe 8:30, 9 o'clock in the evening. By about 15, 16, most teenagers are awake till 11 or midnight because their sleep onset period, the release of melatonin drifts back later into the night. Eventually it returns to their kind of chronotype, whatever that is, lark, owl, or somewhere in between. But it's important to know that for our teenagers. The other thing that sends us to sleep is something called sleep pressure, and this chemical called adenosine. That's that scratchy-eyed feeling that we get in the evenings. Adenosine is a chemical that plugs the synapses around our brain and makes us feel tired. So when sleep pressure and melatonin release match and hit together, that is that maximum moment of sleepiness in the evening. I call it the Netflix nod when we're drifting off in front of the telly. We should be in bed at that point, because if we're in bed at that point, we'll fall asleep within 10 or 15 minutes. So we should all set ourselves a resolution to make sure that we're in bed before we go to sleep. How many of us end up falling asleep on the couch and then waking up 3 hours later, having reduced our sleep pressure and therefore less able to sleep for a period of time once we finally get into bed? Okay, some bad news. The impacts of caffeine, we kind of know, but caffeine is the same shape as adenosine. So when we're drinking caffeine, it sits in the synapses and doesn't allow adenosine, the fatigue chemical, to build up. So that means if we're having caffeine into the evening, it can keep us awake for quite a long period of time, because adenosine can't actually get in there and build up our sleep pressure. So we should really make sure we don't drink caffeine beyond a certain point in the day. So what is the purpose of sleep? Evolution spent a lot of time building sleep. It's incredible. It does amazing things. One of the most amazing things it does is it encodes memory. Every night when we go to sleep, our brain reinforces memories we've used during the day, and slowly and upsettingly begins to erase memories that we haven't used in a while. So if we haven't used a memory for a period of time, the brain will repurpose that circuit and begin to use it for something else. So every time we think about something, touch a memory, our brain reinforces that memory. Obviously, there are memories deep in our heads that we don't remember even laying down. For example, bits of music that we listened to when we were kids. When we listen to that bit of music again, what happens, because it was repeated so much, it's encoded deep in our memory, and then the music in the environment enables us to access the encoded memory. But for fresh memories, the brain is repatterning those experiences each night and reinforcing memories that have been experienced and learning that's been experienced, and slowly but surely erasing memory that hasn't. So less than 6 hours sleep, 30% less memory the next day. That means that we're not able to remember information that's coming at us the next day, and we're not able to necessarily encode as effectively the previous day's learning experiences as well. Very topical at the moment, the immune system, 70% of it is built overnight. And if we get less than 6 hours sleep, that doesn't enable our immune system to build all the killer T cells it needs to patrol the body to look for invading microorganisms. And another thing that happens in relation to the immune system at night is around every neuron, there are these glial cells. They're like, if a neuron was an athlete, then the glial cell would be a coach. And the glial cells contract, allowing a fluid called cerebral spinal fluid to drain through the brain, clearing out the chemicals of fatigue and resetting the brain for the next day. We've only discovered that recently. So the brain is having a kind of jet wash experience every evening as cerebral spinal fluid drains through the brain. It can only happen when we're offline, when we're out of the picture and we've gone to sleep. So sleep plays a massive part in our physical health, lowers our blood pressure, helps our helps our blood sugar system, and if we don't manage to get enough sleep, that's one of the areas that can lead us towards diabetes if we're not getting enough sleep for long periods of time. So our physical and mental health, it's really important to make sure we get enough sleep. It does a whole bunch of things. It's been designed over millions of years to do that. We sleep in cycles, which you're probably aware of, and this is somebody's hypnogram over the course of an evening. into the morning. You've got 5 sleep cycles. You dive into deep NREM sleep, which is non-rapid eye movement sleep. There's not much dreaming that's happening there. That's memory reinforcement happening there. That's the brain being cleansed happening there. And then we move into REM sleep, which is about a bit of creativity, ideas being smashed together across the brain. Also emotions being cleansed and re-experienced without some of the chemicals that would make that a painful experience. And as you see, we surface briefly into a kind of light sleep, and then we dive back down and we go through a period of NREM and REM. And as you can see, as you get towards the morning, you get more dreaming sleep. You get the larger blocks of dreaming sleep towards the morning, and those are the dreams that we remember. So it's really important that our brain experiences these sleep cycles, because loads of different things are happening at different moments through the night. Upsetting news about coffee, even more upsetting news about alcohol. I mean, this was meant to be about well-being, Andrew. What are you doing? You're taking away alcohol now. The problem with alcohol is alcohol does to dreaming sleep what Domestos does to bacteria. So it destroys dreaming sleep. And so, you know, when I first read that research, I thought, hang on a minute, when I drink, I fall asleep, basically. But actually, I've discovered I wasn't falling asleep. I'm actually just falling into a heavy sedation, and sleep occurs once my body's processed the alcohol. So dreaming sleep is got rid of by alcohol. So the only solution I could find in the research to this was a couple of solutions. One's tongue-in-cheek. Drinking early in the day seemed to be quite a possibility. Drink about 11 a.m. in the morning. I'm joking, but drinking about 11 a.m. in the morning meant that you'd processed and metabolized the alcohol by the evening. More seriously, you know, if you are a lark like I am, if you drink a glass of wine about 5:30 in the evening, you'll have metabolized it by 9:30, and it won't affect your sleep. But the effect of alcohol on sleep is profound, and it's quite damaging. And then if we look upsettingly at the whole issue of the problems that sleep deprivation can cause any of us at any time, and those map on strongly to the symptoms of mental illnesses. And there's this kind of complicated relationship between sleep and mental illness. And we'd all recognize a lot of these things as experiences we have after a poor night's sleep. Okay, so let's now, in the last few minutes, just talk about how we can get more of rock number 1. So I'll send you all a sheet as well with lots of advice on afterwards, as well as this webinar. So stick to no caffeine after midday. That gives your brain and body plenty of time to metabolize that caffeine, so it doesn't plug up the synapses and stop sleep pressure building. Sleep pressure is like half the reason that we feel fatigued in the evening, and that sends us to sleep. So that's one good bit of advice. Getting more sleep through sleep hygiene. So that's making sure that our bedroom is cool, because that's one of the physiological triggers sending us to sleep. Coldness, our body temperature drops. Making sure that our bedroom is dark and we don't have any technology in our bedroom. And if you were only to apply one piece of advice from this webinar, then making sure that you have a regular bed and get up time and work out your sleep stride, which we'll come to onto in a second. Other things you could try are having a hot bath before bed, because while the heat will warm you up, as you get out of the bath, your temperature will drop, and linking to the natural sleepiness that is generated by temperature drop, hoping to send you to sleep sooner. But obviously, any kind of technology in the bedroom, the light will reduce the ability of the brain to sleep, and obviously all the distractions that are available on technology will also reduce the brain's ability to disengage from the world. Okay, so let's mention sleep stride. So your sleep stride is basically, we've all got a natural sleepy time when we fall asleep in the evenings, and a natural wake time. So I'll just talk about me. So my natural sleep time is really 9 o'clock. I need to be in bed at 9 o'clock. I'm asleep by 9:20. I can feel the melatonin almost, and the kind of sleep pressure building. And then my natural wake up time is about 5:30. So for the last few days, I've been waking up at 6:30 and going to bed about 10:30 as I readjust because the clocks have moved forward. But slowly but surely, I'll be back to 9:30 to 5:30. And actually, I don't need to lay in, and we don't need to lay in. We can't bank sleep for the weekend. The most effective way of getting the most amount of sleep is to make sure we're almost setting an alarm clock to go to bed. Make sure we set an alarm clock to go to bed rather than to wake us up. And we shouldn't need an alarm clock to wake us up if we get into our sleep stride. And it takes a few weeks. It's not instant. It might take 3 or 4 weeks of just sticking to the same bedtime. Sleep is a bit of a brittle process. Some nights it'll be better than others, but we'll get into a habit and a structure, and we can live within our sleep stride. Obviously, the complication is in a household, loads of people have got different sleep strides, and some people are up late, maybe waking up some of the people that have gone to bed earlier. But you can train your household. They will protect your sleep, and you can protect their sleep if you're up early in the morning and they're still asleep because their sleep stride is later. Okay, let's just talk about insomnia and just explore, am I an insomniac? Well, the definition of insomnia is here. I'll just let you read that. When I send you a video, so the webinar video, I'll put a link into a website where you can just answer a few questions about insomnia, just to see if you are an insomniac. Fewer of us are insomniacs than think we are, actually. The definition is fairly kind of focused, but I'll send you, like I say, a sheet of lots of advice as well to go along with that. So if you are struggling to get enough sleep, some of the things we've already mentioned, but also get more exercise in the daytime. If you can get 15 to 20 minutes of exercise in the day and physically move your body around, it generates more of that fatigue chemical, adenosine, which means that you're more tired when you go to bed. So it's really important to try and get more of rock number 2 to support getting better sleep. Daily meditation practice, let me mention the reasons for that. You'll have come across, I'm sure, apps like Calm and Headspace. They do some good meditations to help people into sleep, but really I'm thinking more here of getting into a practice daily of 10 minutes of meditation, focusing on one's breathing, or even focusing on your steps as you're walking outside. That focus puts us in our prefrontal cortex and gets us to focus on some external source of information like breathing. So you're just counting your breathing, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And if you get into that rhythm and build those structures during the course of the daytime, every time you do that in the daytime, you're making more connections between your prefrontal cortex and much older bits of your brain. So when you wake up feeling very stressed in the middle of the night, and the reason we feel really stressed in the middle of the night is because our prefrontal cortex, the bit that manages our emotional response, is offline at night. So everything looks terrifying in the depth of the night. And the most important thing to do at that point is not to engage our prefrontal cortex in chasing those worries around our head, but is to focus on our breathing and just literally count 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. It won't work initially if you've not practiced it in the daytime. What that then begins to do, that daytime practice, means you've got those structures and your brain can switch into that structure. Turn the clock away. Don't look at the clock because that can stress us out as well. Don't chase the worries around your head. One of the useful devices you can also use is have a mantra that means that you don't try and litigate tomorrow's problems, which is what the brain will be trying to do. If you've got lots of things happening the next day, you're much more likely for the brain to wake you up and start going over those things. I use a little mantra called DLT, don't litigate tomorrow. So I do my breathing, 1, 2, 1, 2, and I say DLT, 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 1, 2. Don't litigate tomorrow. It's an instruction to my brain not to try and solve tomorrow's problems. Okay, last bits of advice. Journal is quite helpful. You can use a journal in a number of ways. Really, for me, to capture emotional experiences during the day, particularly ones that are heavy and difficult emotional experiences, just tracking them, writing down what emotions were involved, maybe reflecting briefly, not spending a long time on it. And the other way I use a journal is in the last few hours of the day, I write a big reminder list of all the things that I want to go over the next day. So my brain is much less likely to go churning over them during the course of the night because I've already written them down. So begin a kind of bullet journal practice, and I'll put some information in the email that I send to you about journaling. Last couple of things, making sure we don't eat very close up to bedtime, because that whole process of digestion can affect our comfortableness. It's kind of obvious, but it's really important to say it. Make sure we build in time in the evenings when we're not engaging in a great deal. We're listening to music, we're reading a book, we're having a bath, watching a little bit of telly, but nothing too challenging or upsetting that enables our brain to head into a process of wind down as we head into sleep. And then I mentioned technology, but have an agreement across the house that everyone puts their phones down at 7 p.m. and leaves them on charge downstairs away from bed. Okay, we've reached the end, and amazingly, I'm actually on time. If anyone's got any questions, you're welcome to ask them. I'm going to be around for a bit. I'll make sure that you get the video of this, and I'll send you all an email with the video link embedded and loads of advice about sleep. If anyone's got any questions, please do ask, and you're welcome to reply to the video. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. But good luck, and I would say the thing to practice first is the same bedtime. And if there's anyone out there that's a shift worker, or anyone that's a shift worker, I've got specific advice for shift workers, because that's particularly tricky. Thank you so much for coming along. The last inspiring video, I love this video. I just want to share it with you. Really, at the end of every 12 Rock seminar, I will play an inspiring video. For this one, for me, the whole point of well-being, the whole point of deliberate rest is to persuade people that actually they've got the most amazing bit of kit at the top of their necks, and once they really do deliberate rest properly, they are unstoppable. And I wanted to show you this guy because he's completely unstoppable in a way that actually wasn't the way that he intended. So Barcelona Olympics 1992, Derek Redmond's in the 400 meters final.
When troubles come and my heart burdened be, then I am still and wait here in the silence until you come and sit a while with me. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be.
such an inspiring and very upsetting video, but actually just to capture that notion that if we do deliberate rest, if we look after our brains, generating the best version of ourselves, we can become unstoppable and do all the things that we want to do. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll be around for the next 10 minutes to answer any questions, and I will send you a link with all that information in. And hopefully see you at the same time next week, where we're looking at rock number 2, which always causes me to groan, exercise, but it's fantastic for the body and amazing for the brain. Thank you so much for coming along.